Okay, hello everyone. So what we're looking at today is working on your AncestryDNA matches and grouping them and how to make the grouping process easier. I've seen a number of videos where people have actually gone through and shown how to actually do the grouping, how to separate off each of your main lines or to discover what lines you have. But most of them are looking at the 24 color dots that Ancestry uses, and they're encouraging you to use as many of those dots as you can to create groups, and they're also encouraging you to link your groups to familiar surnames or places and things like that. What I'm looking at doing is actually encouraging people to minimize the number of dots that they're using, and rather than using more dots, work with more test kits. By working with more test kits and using the same simple process for each test kit, you will eventually get all of those different branches, and you'll get ways to actually work on and study those branches. Outside of the 4 main dots that I use, I would recommend using the notes section, and I'll show you how I do that. So let's get started. So what we're actually looking at doing is grouping the dots in a way that links with your 4 grandparent groups. The way that I'd like to actually start is to sort of link what people are doing to something that they'd be familiar with. So looking at how to do a jigsaw puzzle, there's a website that actually goes through the whole process, teaches you how to do it. I think most people would understand how we do that. I mean, everyone has their own unique way of doing it, but you pretty much deal with every jigsaw puzzle in the same way that you would that you're used to. So first of all, before you even start, you want to make sure you've got a good workplace. So you need somewhere where you can actually build your jigsaw puzzle. Now, in what I do, I actually do all of my work in Family Tree Maker. Family Tree Maker helps me keep all of the extra bits organized, the things that I need to do, the notes that I need to make, helping me understand the relationships between one person and another. I see a lot of people using their AncestryDNA match pages in the notes section. They're actually putting in huge amounts of notes. And what that does is it actually makes sorting your DNA matches a little cloudy, because you've got all of this extra information which really should be stored in your family tree program. Now, if you're only using the family tree that you're building on Ancestry, that makes it a little harder, because obviously that's public and that's out there and everyone can see that. You may want to consider using something like Family Tree Maker or a desktop program that you can actually store a lot of your information and keep that information private, and you're only putting the tree direct information out to people. So that's the workplace and the setup that I use. So I use Family Tree Maker and I publish to my own website. But as far as dealing with each DNA match, I only actually use one family tree. So that family tree links me and all of the people that I DNA match. Even if I don't know how they match to me in the tree, the branch that they're part of, the part that I've proven is connected to me through their DNA, I would add that as an unlinked branch in my tree. The strategies that a lot of people would use, first of all, with a jigsaw puzzle, is that they would go through and sort their DNA. So the jigsaw puzzle that we're looking at is, how do all these DNA people link to us? The strategy that we're wanting to do is a sorting strategy. So we're wanting to actually group them into in this case, the 4 main grandparent groups, which is what I focus on when sorting my DNA. So first of all, we build the framework. So a lot of times I'm helping someone with their DNA, trying to understand their DNA, and they'll come to me and the first thing I say is, okay, so what do you know? Most of the time they haven't actually built a tree, and if they have built a tree, they may not have gone back or out wide or anything like that. They may just have the basic information of themselves, their parents and their grandparents. That's a good starting point, but really to link your DNA, you need to work a lot further back than that, and you need to work a lot more width than that. If you're using your DNA because you don't know those answers, then there is some other techniques we can use. I can go through those in another video. But at the moment, we're assuming that we're working with a person that knows who their 4 grandparents are, or at least believes that their 4 grandparents are biologically their 4 grandparents. We're working with what we know. We actually build a tree. We include those people in there. Then we work on small areas. So what we want to do is with each grandparent, we want to try and expand that. We want to find out who their parents were and what siblings they have, so that we can actually look for our first, second, and third cousins. It's those DNA matches that are going to be the most important to us to start with. So here I'm actually saying, if you're stuck, do something different. What I mean by that is, if you're currently working with your DNA matches and it's not actually revealing to you information about who the other matches are, then you probably need to look at a different strategy for actually doing something with those matches. The technique that I use is that I'm actually working on my DNA kit. I'm working on a number of other DNA kits that I've had family members do, direct family members. And I'm also sharing that information with people that are working on individual lines that I'm interested in, and I'm asking them to collaborate their DNA matches with me. So a very important part of this is that if you're going to actually limit the number of dots you're using for each tree, for each DNA tester, what you actually want to do is you actually want to have more DNA tests that you can actually do that grouping strategy too. So hopefully at the end of it, the finished picture of your family tree and your DNA actually match up. So hopefully what you get is you can identify most of those top matches. You know what line they're from. Those lines confirm that the tree that you've built is correct, so that at least back through to your great-grandparents, you should actually be able to say, I have DNA matches that proves each line. So I'm related to people that are also related to those lines, and they show up in my DNA. I started on my DNA about 7 or 8 years ago, and at the time, I'd done quite a large family tree, and that family tree had a number of errors in it that only DNA was going to identify. So once I did my DNA, I actually realised that some of the branches that I had researched, and I'd researched them quite in depth, actually weren't showing up in my DNA. There was either an issue with my DNA, the way that the DNA was limited to what my DNA would show, and so I needed to test other people to actually expand on the amount of information that I had from my DNA, or I needed to actually work out why my DNA wasn't showing what it was supposed to show. One of the first things that I did was that I actually looked at the DNA clustering videos that were available at the time. Here I've got DNA videos that taught me initially to sort my DNA. Most of the DNA videos online will actually encourage you to cluster your groups into surname groups, or they might cluster them into random unknown groups and eventually settle on what those groups are. Some of them encourage you to use an 8-colour system, some of them encourage you to use 12, all the way up to all 24 colours of what's available on Ancestry for grouping. I would say that if you're only working on one DNA kit and that's yours, you want to go to the depth of trying to put all of those colours into there. It looks great, and obviously there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's not replicatable. You can't actually take what you've done with yours and copy that to your father's, or copy that to your mother's, or copy that to your child's. What you will find is that every single one of those testers will end up with a different dot color system. They'll end up with names linked to them, so the names will be all different. So every time you switch from one kit to another, you have to readjust where you're at. You'll have to look at how that kit is associated with the colors and the naming patterns that are there. With my system, I use exactly the same system on every DNA kit. It doesn't matter which kit I'm in. I can do DNA sorting. I can sort the matches. I don't even have to really think about whose kit I'm in. I don't even have to think about what family names or what groups. I'm actually just using the DNA, and I'm just using the system of sorting to actually get people to where they need to be. So this is specifically targeted around AncestryDNA. So yes, you can use this technique on a lot of the other sites, and I have actually copied my colouring system to MyHeritage, but those sites don't actually make it easy for you to sort those colours and to match what you've already learned. So 90% of my work is done with testers in the AncestryDNA, and then I use that information to go and compare it to results in other testing companies to see if I can strengthen what I've found. So how does it work? So I'm going to actually start with looking at my dad's DNA, and the reason I'm doing that is because it makes it simpler for me to actually explain to you how this actually works. So you'll see here, this is my dad's DNA, and the two top matches he has is myself as his son and his mum as both being at 3,500 centimorgans. So at that level of centimorgans, we have to be either a parent or a child to the tester. The fact that I don't have a DNA test for my grandfather, unfortunately he passed away before I started doing DNA testing, means that at the moment it's fairly easy to sort my dad's DNA for his mother's side, but a little harder to sort his DNA for his father's side. So what I needed to do was collaborate with other testers that link to his father's side to be able to advance on this. But what I want to draw your attention to is a number of things. First of all, Ancestry is already saying that they have a common ancestor suggestion for this person. I've labelled it as son, and I've linked it to my tree. So this is somebody that we know. We know the relationship between me and my father, and we know that I share all four of my father's biological grandparents. I also use the star system to identify that I have added a person to my tree, and that in most cases they are complete. So here we know that his mum only matches him on two of his sides, and that is his maternal side. So his mother's paternal and mother's maternal side are linked to him. The grouping system that I use is fairly straightforward. So basically, father's maternal line, father's paternal line, mother's maternal, mother's paternal. There is also a father's side and a mother's side, which is just off screen. But basically, they're only used as holding groups for people that we know are on one side, but we can't actually determine which line they're in at this point. So how does that work? So here's the grouping system that I've added, and this naming system here I use for every single DNA kit that I manage. So currently over 200 kits, and those naming policies would be on every single one using exactly the same color system. Here is my dad's tree. So my dad actually has his father's paternal line using the dark blue dot because it's the most male line. His mother's maternal line using the dark pink dot because it's his most female line. And then a mother's paternal line, lighter pink, father's maternal line, lighter blue. Every time we sort a particular DNA tester's line, these are the colours that I use. Now, if somebody is only on the father's side, they get the darkest blue dot. If they're only on the mother's side, they get the darkest pink dot. Outside of that, so you can see here that looking at his tree, so here Ancestry is saying the relationship to Darryl Brady is likely to be son, and I've given all four dots because this is the four lines of my father's tree that I relate to. So that's proven. So I get those four dots and I put a star. And that's how we add them in. This is just giving you an example of, it's not always straightforward. It's not always the four colours. So here in this group, by looking at what I've done with this particular group, I can see here that I've got some unknown groups. And those unknown groups do have names associated to them or just random group names. But what we can see is that we have confirmed mother's maternal line. We've confirmed 16 matches in that line. So at the moment, this person only knows one of their biological line. This second one has an issue on the mother's side. So after doing the grouping process, what we found here is that we've been able to successfully find the father's paternal and maternal lines, a large number. Nearly all of their matches that we could sort have been sorted. On the mother's side, we found 64 from the mother's maternal line, but only one confirmed mother's paternal. That would be probably the mother. So what it tells me is that the mother's paternal line is currently incorrect. So the tree and the DNA do not match up. So for this person, I would actually be sorting and working on trying to understand how these matches here could biologically be related to them. This group here using unknown groups. So basically here we have, again, we can see that the father's side is fairly well documented, but the mother's side, again, has a fairly strong maternal line, but the maternal line is a lot smaller. So this tells me that it's more likely that this paternal line is going back only a generation or a couple of generations. So likely that these unknown groups are actually probably extensions on this, and that it may be that the tester's mother's father has incorrect parents or incorrect, could maybe not related to one of those lines. So it tells me fairly quickly, but the goal is to actually work towards getting your DNA matches to look like this. So if you can actually sort your DNA matches like this, in this case we have 413 that are being put in the tree, and of those most of them are sorted. We can see that we've still got some work to do to sort these matches into their groups. The way that I go about doing that is that I'm actually looking at giving access to my DNA to people that are researching the same lives that I am, or asking people that are DNA matches to me or to the line that I'm trying to work on, so that I can actually look at theirs and collaborate with them to actually solve how those lines connect. In most cases, what I'm asking them to do is to allow me to see their DNA matches, and then from that allow me to actually implement my grouping policy with their DNA matches. So I'm going to be doing a bunch of the work for them by sorting their DNA matches. Once I've done that, I can actually identify which line it is in their DNA that I'm interested in, that I'm connected to. And then from there, we are now a step closer to actually solving how we would be connected. So for me, when I'm looking at when I'm logged into Ancestry and I go view another test, I actually have myself, and I have currently over 200 other testers. So when I'm working on a particular line, if I'm focusing on my father's paternal line, I can actually go in here and I can actually go to the other DNA testers that I believe are linked to the Brady line. And if I've sorted their DNA matches, I can tell which of their lines links to the Brady line. And with that, I can look for shared common matches between us. Now, Ancestry shows us a number of shared common matches, but what I'm looking for is actually a larger group of shared matches. What I'd like to do is actually do some other videos that actually go a little bit more in depth into how to actually do each of these processes. And so what I will do now is I will actually finish this video and give you an opportunity to click on some of the other videos that I'm sharing.